we'd walk 3 or 4 miles one way, going house to house, serenading, they called it back then. And we'd do the same thing at Christmas time. And I remember one lady especially, Miss Mary Belest. She, that was about as far as we went. She was kind of the end of the line. But she would always have us a big pot of hot chocolate. It'd be cold and we'd be out serenading at Christmas time. We'd get to her house, she'd invite us all in, give us hot chocolate and maybe some cookies. We just had a wonderful time. She was a precious, precious lady. And I still stay in touch with one of her sons. And we grew up together. We had a good time.
Tell me about those homemade go-karts you made.
Oh, we used to make wagons, carts we call them, to ride down the hills. They didn't have an engine on them, but they had bigger wheels on the back, smaller wheels on the front. One of my neighbors had a chicken farm, and they had these wagons that they pushed down feeding the chickens. They didn't have automatic feeders back then. And when they would rust out, we'd get the wheels off of them and make us a wagon. We'd take a 2x6, and then we'd bolt a 2x4 on the front so we could steer it with a rope on each side. And we even got to where we would put a steering wheel on it. We'd put a 2x4 up, put a steering wheel on it. My brothers was always fooling around with automobiles. We'd always have a steering wheel. And we'd wrap the rope around the broomstick one way, the other way, the other another way. And when you turned it, it made it go one way or the other. And we had two neighbors named Otis and Roger Sailors. They were dear friends of ours. We went to school together, played together a lot. They'd come up and help us get our chores done so we could play together. And we just had a good time with them. And Roger got on it one day and started down this steep hill we had down behind the barn. And one of the ropes came loose and he slammed into a pine tree and it just threw him about 25 feet down the trail. And I thought he was dead. We went running down there and, Roger, you okay? Oh, yeah, I'm okay. And he finally got up. And in 15 minutes, he was riding down it again. We got it fixed, so he was going again. And we had a gully down below the house. It started out not very deep, and as you went on up, it got deeper and deeper. And in the middle of that gully was a small gully that had sand in it that washed down. And we'd start down here and jump off in that sand, seeing who would dare to go the furthest. If you got up to the top, he was probably about 15 to 18 feet deep down there to the middle of the gully. And we'd see who was brave enough to jump all the way up to the top. So wonder we didn't get killed, but the woods were filled with muscadines, wild muscadines, crab apples. We'd take us a handful of salt and go down and get these sour crab apples and eat them with the salt. And we had a little stream down behind the house. And we'd go down and take tow sacks, burlap sacks, and we'd fill them up with dirt and we'd dam the creek up. Well, it wasn't really a creek, it was just a little stream. And it'd get up maybe halfway up to your straddle, and we'd play in that and pretend we were swimming and all that stuff. We just had a great time doing stuff like that. Most people today don't even know how to have fun. Most everybody sees sitting around doing this all the time with their telephone. They're missing out on so much in life. When I was in college, the teacher said, you know, some of these kids in the ghetto don't have any toys to play with. I said, we didn't either. We made our own toys. We'd take blocks of wood and they'd be our trucks. Vanilla flavoring bottles got empty. Those were our cars. We played cars with them. We had a good time. One time our well went bad and my dad had us digging a well. So there were about 4 or 5 of us boys dig a well. You'd go down there and let somebody down in there and dig a well. We'd pull the dirt out. But we got down to about 25, 30 feet and hit solid rock. So we just had to fill it back in. We eventually had a well drilled. But I grew up poor. I mean, we didn't have an inside bathroom until I got out of high school and got a job. And I paid to have the septic tank and all put in so we could have an inside bathroom. But before then, we had an outhouse. That's what we had to go use. And I hated it on a rainy night. Have to get out in the cold and rain, and walk the way out. We didn't want the outhouse close to the house because it stunk so bad. So it had to be out away from the house. You had to walk in the rain out there. All that. It was an interesting adventure. And, I don't know if any of you guys ever grew up like that, but some of the older folks did, I'm sure. But we had a good time. And like I say, I wouldn't take anything in the world for it now, because I have so many memories, so many memories. I asked my dad when he got older, I said, "What's it like, Dad, to be older?" He said, "Son, the bad thing about getting older is just about the time you think you've got life figured out and you can really live it, it's time to die." And I think he had a good point there, because you learn so much as you get older. And one older man just the other day, somebody asked him, "What's it like to get old?" He said, "You just get tired. You just get tired. That's the biggest problem. You have no energy, you just get tired." So I hope all of you have had a good life and are still having a good life. I still have a good life. I'm sitting around this table with my son and his wife and 2 boys, and we just had dinner together. And I mean, what else could you want in life besides something like that? We were a family. We were a family. All growing up, we were a family. Everybody knew the Merck family, and we knew all their families. We knew everybody that lived around us for a couple of miles. We even knew some of their dogs' names. I mean, that's what it was like back in those days, because you lived and loved and had a good time and helped each other. It was just a great time to grow up. And what worries me about life now is I'm afraid that my grandchildren and my children even are not going to see the America we grew up in, because things are changing so rapidly here in our country. It troubles me, all the sin and corruption and anger and everything that's going on. It bothers me to think that my kids and grandkids have to grow up in all that situation, and they won't enjoy the life we had when we were growing up. We never had any problems around our community. I remember we had one lady, her husband owned a shoe store, she worked at a jewelry store. And they had a small house, but they had she had accumulated a lot of jewelry and silver and all that over the years working in the jewelry store. And somebody broke in and stole all that jewelry and everything. That was the talk of the town for months, because nothing like that ever happened in our community. I mean, everybody, did you hear what happened? They broke in and stole all their stuff. I mean, that was big time news. Now I read in the paper or hear on the newspaper, hear on the radio or the TV, down where I lived, all those farms are subdivisions, and they have murders, they have drugs, they have all this stuff going on a lot of the time. It's sad to me to see that happening. And I could, where some of them have their subdivisions, friends I knew on the farm there. And I knew them, and I knew their kids and grew up with their kids. And now it's a subdivision and just not the same as it used to be.
Tell about the fireball.
Oh, the fireball. Well, let's make a good story. I had an uncle who had a T-model, and a train hit it and killed him. And, back then they brought the body home, set it up in the living room. People set up with the dead all night long. They didn't ever leave dead people alone. You always had people set up with the dead. And so one night, it was in the summertime, and there were a lot of people sitting up, hadn't got too late then, and they were out, some of them were out on the porch, and when they had prepared the body, they took his old clothes off and washed the body and then put better clothes on and put him in the casket. Well, they had put his old clothes in an outbuilding out there. And they were sitting around on the porch, and all of a sudden, down in the woods appeared a ball of fire. Now, this was told to me by some of the people that were there. They said a ball of fire just kind of popped up out of the woods and started coming toward that outbuilding. And it moved slowly, slowly, slowly. They were all scared to death, and they didn't know what was happening. It went to that outbuilding. It looked to them like it just went through the wall and disappeared for a few minutes in the building. And then in a few minutes, it came back out of the wall and went slowly back off out into the woods. And nobody dared go out there that night. But the next day when they went out there, they looked and all of those clothes were gone. And then nobody had any explanation for it. They didn't know what happened, but it was real to them. they told everybody around there what had happened. It was unbelievable. I don't have any explanation for it, but it scared them all to death. They didn't know what to think. Yeah, a lot of things happened in our community. One time, the word got out that there was a panther loose. A lot of people's dogs got killed at night, and one guy claimed he had seen this black panther running around the community, and it was something to behold. You could go out to visit anybody everybody you go see would be sitting out on their porch with their gun, waiting on that Black Panther to come by. My mom had a little dog that she just loved, and we got up one morning and it had been killed. Somebody just chewed it all up. So they really thought the panther had done that. But it was really just amazing. Everybody was worried about that panther, what was going to happen. And I heard it last night. I heard it screaming, going "Rah!" off down in the woods. And they just spread it all around. So people got all shook up. And one of the favorite things people did back in those days was make homemade ice cream. And one of the reasons it's good to make homemade ice cream, everybody had a cow, everybody had plenty of milk, so you didn't have to buy any milk. Everybody had some sugar. Of course, you had to buy your sugar. That's one of the few things we bought on the farm is sugar and flour. And my mom would mix up homemade ice cream. And we'd take ice, we'd buy some ice blocks from City Ice and chip it all up. She made different kinds of ice cream. She made banana homemade ice cream. She made maraschino cherry homemade ice cream. She made peach ice cream in the summertime. She made a lot of different kind of ice creams. They were all good. We had guys that worked with my brothers. They loved to come down to our house and eat homemade ice cream. And you had to crank it. We didn't have electric one back in those days. You'd have to crank it and crank it and crank it and crank it. And when it got down toward the end, before it got real hard, somebody'd have to sit on the ice cream freezer and hold it down while you cranked it and cranked it and cranked it and cranked it. But boy, when it got done, you talk about eating ice cream now. We had a good time eating homemade ice cream. We just had a wonderful time. You don't have to have modern things to have fun, have a good time. You can do a lot of things yourself. And I'm just afraid most people have forgotten that you can have fun. When my wife and I first got married, that was October the 3rd of 1970. We've been married over 52 years now. Our mobile home needed a lot of work done on it. We had to work on it and clean it up. Really had been sitting out unused for a few years before we bought it. But it's all we could afford at the time. We paid $2,050 for it. And we lived in it a couple of years till we got a house built. And we didn't have a dryer. We had a washer, but we didn't have a dryer. So we didn't have a place to put a dryer. Well, my dad lived next door, and they had a porch on the back of their house. We told him, said, we'll buy the dryer and put it out there, then we can both use it. So we did that. My mom had never had a dryer. She hung the clothes out on the line all the time and let them dry. And I'm going to tell you this. You haven't slept until you sleep on a set of sheets that have been dried on the clothesline and put on the bed. They're so fresh. They were so good. Oh, you can just sleep away on those sheets. But anyway, my dad was a big trickster. So my wife would go up to get our clothes and bring them home, and she'd start to put on some of her pants. And my dad had taken a needle and thread and sewed the bottoms of them together. She'd about break her neck trying to put on her pants. So she would pull tricks on him all the time. A lot of times he'd lay back in his recliner, have his mouth open, go to sleep. And she'd take some salt, and while he was opening his mouth, she'd pour his mouth full of salt. He would, they teased each other, pulled pranks on each other all the time. Because he loved life and just loved people, just loved to be around them, loved to pull jokes on people. And he could take it if you pulled a joke on him. It was okay. He never would eat cheese. I said, why don't you eat cheese, Dad? He said, well, when I was growing up, at the old country stores, they had a big barrel out there. And all the old farmers would bring their old butter and put it in that barrel. And they sold it to the people that made cheese out of that. And he said it stunk so bad before they ever picked it up. It was awful. He said, I just wouldn't eat cheese because of that. Well, my wife used to sneak stuff in the food, put cheese in it. He didn't know it, but he ate it anyway. And she'd say, how'd you like that, Papa? He said, oh, that was good, that's good. She doesn't ever tell him that had cheese in it. But she pulled that on him a lot. And we were talking one wintertime of either 70 or 71, I don't remember. We got married, October of 70. So it was either like December of 70 or January, February, or March of 71. We were in bed one night. My wife said, "Where are we going on vacation?" Well, I'd never been on vacation except we did go with my brother and his wife to Florida one time for a couple of days, but we never went on vacation. So I said, just out of having fun, I said, "Let's go to the Grand Canyon." And we both laughed and had a good laugh at it. I started thinking about it. I said, we really could go to the Grand Canyon. You have nearly a new car. Gas was like 27, 28 cents a gallon. I said, we could go to the Grand Canyon. So we decided we'd take one of our parents with us, one set of parents. So we thought about it, and I said, well, let's take my mom and dad since we're going out west, because he had read every Zane Grey book that Zane Grey ever written. And he read all about the Painted Desert and the Petrified Forest and all out west, and about the cowboys and everything. So the next day when he walked down the mailbox, I went out and asked him if they'd like to go on vacation to go out west. Oh man, he's ready to go right then. He couldn't wait. And that summer we took him out west, and we went to some of those places. Went to the Petrified Forest, the Grand Canyon, the Painted Desert. We saw all those things and rode all out west. Just had a wonderful time doing that. And they never forgot it. Well, they talked about that till their dying day. They really enjoyed that trip out west. And we took them a lot of places. We took them to Niagara Falls. We took them up in the Amish country in Indiana. We took them to Myrtle Beach. We took them to Florida several times. And we just had a good time with them. Maureen's mom died, so we weren't able to ever take her. She died when she was 50 years old. But we did take her dad up to the Amish country and see all that kind of stuff. Had a good time with him. So we've had a wonderful life. It's been good. Come from good stock, good people, and we thank the Lord for it.